Hello, it's Stuart, the unrepentant atheist, and I've been debating with somebody on Facebook, not something I usually do, very rarely, in fact, but I just happened to come across a post which I found sort of interesting and ended up getting into a discussion with somebody who is obviously a Christian, and I felt that he was putting forward some fairly absurd points, so I decided to rebut what he was saying. So the conversation basically started off by me challenging theism, and then him saying to me, "Have you read the Bible cover to cover?" I said, "Well, no, I haven't read the Bible cover to cover. I know it fairly well, probably better than most Christians, and maybe even better than you. But why should I read it cover to cover when it's not even established who it's written by? It would have to be you'd have to prove to me that it's written by God and that there is a God for me to take it seriously." So he replied as follows. You either believe that life happened by accident or that there is a creator. Period. If you believe life happened by accident, that is an absurd claim, as absurd as your very existence in a vacuum of space and nothing that goes on infinite, or the notion that you're typing words on a screen and have no idea how a piece of flesh in between your ears is generating magical electrical currents that allow you to even remember what you just typed to continue on with the sentence you're typing. If you believe life is not an accident, you believe in God. Okay, well, this sounds to me completely like argument from ignorance. You can't tell me how the brain works, therefore God exists. Now, what do you do when you encounter that kind of level of poor reasoning? What do you do with it, especially from somebody who sounds as arrogant as he does? And I did reply to him. I said, "I think you need to read up on cosmology and evolutionary science. There are good reasons to believe the universe and life occurred through purely natural means. This is not to say life came about by accident, since the physical laws and evolutionary forces resulted in life as we know it today. It is not a random process, so not an accident. Yes, we know how a piece of flesh in between our ears is generating electrical impulses, and we know how memory works. Go and read up on neuroscience. You are woefully ignorant." Anyway, then he comes back and he says, "Well, neuroscience is descriptive. It's not really explaining anything, etc., etc. It can't explain consciousness, therefore, blah blah blah." And I replied, "Say, well, it's true. We haven't got a full understanding of how consciousness occurs, but they've got some idea, and there are various theories about it." And then he comes back and says, "See, you can't tell me. Therefore God exists, etc., etc. And there can't possibly be infinity. If the universe began, then obviously it had a creator." I came back and said, "Well, we're not really sure whether the universe began or not, and my position is I don't know. I'm still waiting for more evidence." And then he just came back. He said, "Yeah, that's not." He said, "Well, that's absurd. You can't hang around waiting forever for evidence. Either there's a God or everything happened by accident." And I just felt like we were going around in circles, and I eventually, I think, just bailed out of the conversation. But what it really did demonstrate to me is that there are a lot of Christians out there and theists in general who are not really that well read up, or who are fairly well read up, and they just cannot wrap their heads around this idea that because we don't know, that it's illogical to make up an answer or jump to the idea of a God. That because I don't know, and I admit that I don't know, and we haven't yet got the answers, that it's completely okay to make one up. I think a lot of Christians and theists out there, those who've actually spent a little bit of time at least thinking, oh, they might think, well, there's a lot about my religion I'm not too happy with, but I just can't wrap my head around the idea that we're all here and human beings are so complex. We've got consciousness, we've got art, we've got empathy, we've got love. I just cannot possibly accept that it all happened by accident. I'm going to stick with theism because science just hasn't got the answers. I find that so frustrating to deal with that I think in future when I see it, I'm just going to I think I'm just going to let it go, because I can't possibly go on a crusade against this kind of fallacious thinking and bad reasoning. It's going to, I think it's going to drive me to an early grave, where I'll find out whether there's any life after death. So there was that conversation I had. Another one was on YouTube, where there was an interview with a government official from Qatar about homophobia, or some of the homophobic laws in Qatar, and they actually had there was a sort of minder with him, and when he heard him say something that he didn't like, he ended the interview. And what he didn't like was that this member of the Qatar government was saying, "Well, after all, what is homosexuality? You know what it is? I'll tell you what it is. It's damaging the mind." Now, when he said this, this minder said, "Right, the interview's over." He was obviously intelligent enough to realize that he'd made, especially the World Cup's just starting, they want to portray Qatar as a kind of, modern state. And he's just said this completely outrageous thing, and, basically implying that homosexuality is a result of mental illness. That appeared on YouTube, and I looked through some of the comments, and most of it was actually Arabs and Muslims saying, "He's absolutely right. Homosexuality is a result of mental illness." And then somebody said, because I think there were one or two people like me on saying, "Oh, this is so primitive. There's no evidence for it. It's like medieval thinking, etc." And somebody said, "Well, we've got atheists here teaching us morality," because they were saying, "Oh, homosexuals immoral." And I got into a discussion, or sort of bit of an argument with this guy who's obviously a Muslim, and his point was, "What's the basis of your morality?" Same old thing. I said, "Well, secular morality, I base it on empathy and well-being." He said, "Well, what if there are people who don't base it on that?" And I said, "Well, there are people who don't base it on that. And a lot of them are Christians and a lot of them are Muslims." So he said, "Well, there are presidents, there are powerful people who don't agree with you, don't agree with your subjective opinion that morality should be based on empathy and well-being. What about them?" I said, "Well, what about them? We've got you saying that God has laid down a moral base, and yet we've still got presidents, we've got leaders, we've got criminals, we've got all sorts of people, either who don't agree or who know that it's wrong and just enjoy doing those horrible things. What about it?" I said, "That's why we've got laws. That's why we went to war against Hitler, because he didn't agree. He didn't agree with that morality. In his opinion, it was okay to kill people. We disagreed. We had to go to war. What you're saying is no argument for some kind of divine morality." So, that didn't really get anywhere anyway. That didn't really result in anything. I just left the conversation, and he just kept saying, "You can't possibly rely on your morality because it's all subjective. And if we just do whatever we want, then people just go out and kill each other." People do go out and kill each other. Haven't you noticed? Haven't you noticed how many people die, how much crime we've got? And that's despite the fact that we've got so much religion, and religion saying these are God's laws, and yet people are still going out and killing. And we've got humanism. We've got very good arguments for secular morality, and yet people, it's a fact of human nature. A lot of people do go out and do these things, and it's no argument for the existence of God that there are people who disagree with what the consensus on morality actually is. I don't know. I couldn't get him to understand. So, but I mean, just coming back to morality, of course, going back to Dostoevsky, he said, if there's no God, everything is permissible. Everything is permissible. Take a look around the world. Everything is permissible. You can go out and do whatever you want. You can go and kill people. You can make animals suffer, and you can torture them. And if you feel okay with that and you die, there's absolutely fuck all after you die to punish you. Everything is permissible. And the whole point of secular morality is that we've got this agreement, we've got this consensus based on empathy and well-being. We've got that standard, and we've got law to prevent people who have got their own subjective view on what morality is, and they want to go out and do things which are against the consensus of moral opinion, and we've got law to stop that from happening. And whether we've got divine morality or whether we've got secular morality, there will always be people who want to go out and do horrible, what we call immoral things. Those actions which I suppose are against the greatest good, which for me is empathy and well-being, based on empathy and well-being. So yeah, everything is permissible, absolutely, but we've got law, and thankfully we've got consensus, and we've got vast majority who want to live in a society where they're protected against violence and wrongdoing, and we've reached agreement and consensus on what wrongdoing is, and we're going back thousands of years. It's nothing terribly new. The very basics: thou shalt not steal and thou shalt not kill. That was agreed long before Judaism came along. We know that, and it's got nothing to do with God. Okay, guys, that's all. So just to say that I find there are two big reasons why Christians hang on to their beliefs, theists hang on. One of them is causation argument. Where did all this come from? Something must have caused it. And the other thing is morality. We need a moral compass, and they can't accept that human beings have actually developed a pretty good system, good base for morality, which is based on empathy and well-being. So that's all I've got to say for now. I'll be back in a couple of days with my review of the two big atheist shows which are going out on Sunday. Bye for now. Bye.